Hey everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hey, wherever you are in this lovely world. Hopefully it's not good evening. You guys are getting some rest, but hey, thanks for joining if you are listening to us at night. Dom Nicastro here, CMS Wire staff reporter, along with Solodev for this webinar, Planning Your 2018 Digital Strategy, Top 5 Opportunities for CIOs. Never too early to start thinking about 2018. All right, right now, the agenda. We are in the introduction phase. Take no more than 5 minutes for sure, real brief, just to tell you who we are, what we're going to do. And then the meat of the show, you're going to hear from our great presenters who you'll hear a little bit more about in just a second. They're going to be most of the afternoon here, 35 to 40 minutes, and then we want to hear from you. That's right, live Q&A post-presentation. So you guys can actually ask questions now if you want. We probably won't get to them until the Q&A, but you can get them right in there, right now. If you have a burning question, even before you join the webinar, ask it. Use that Q&A module at the bottom left of the browser. And also, just for your reference, those colorful widgets there at the bottom of the browser, they have additional resources, including, hopefully you won't need to use this one, but technical support if you do need it. And there we are. Again, Dom Nicastro here, staff reporter for CMS Wire, putting out lots of stories, themes. We get tweet jams, webinars, of course. We're focusing in those 3 areas. We get digital customer experience, digital workplace, and information management. Been around since 2003. And Solodev, our sponsor, the web experience company. Thank you so much to Solodev for being on board with us today. They're touting that Solodev web experience platform, the on-demand enterprise web content management system. They know what they're talking about, and they build it from the ground up with Amazon Cloud. And we'll tell you, we have a special guest from AWS here today. You'll learn more about them in just a second. So if you want to learn more about these guys, solodev.com. And there I am, your moderator. You'll hear from me sparingly. I'll basically come in at the Q&A at the end, and we do have a poll in the middle, which I'll be administering. We want to hear from you on that, so stay tuned there. But the stars of the show, not me, it's the presenters, Matt Garapi, Chief Digital Officer at Solodev, and Jeff Duffy, Senior Solutions Architect at Amazon Web Services. How cool is that? We got AWS in the house. All right, well, we're going to start with Matt today. Thanks so much for joining us, Matt. It's all yours.
Great. Thanks, Dom. I appreciate it, and thanks to everyone for joining us as well. We're really excited to be here. As mentioned, my name is Matt Garapi, and, at Solodev, we really kind of think of ourselves as being experience explorers. We have a passion for discovering new innovations that I think help to unlock a lot of success and automation for our customers. And as many of you know, there are a lot of technologies at play when it comes to managing your web and your digital strategies. And it is getting more complex by the day. So part of the goal with this webinar is to help decode some of that complexity and ultimately focus on just a few of the mission-critical opportunities that we think are going to rise to the top for you now and into the next year. And as an Amazon Web Services advanced technology partner and competency holder, I'm also excited to be joined by our friends at AWS today, and together we'll be looking ahead at 2018 and what the biggest opportunities are for CIOs and IT leaders. And the foundation for all of it is moving to the cloud, right? This includes not only moving or migrating your website, but leveraging the web technologies and the applications that can power your overall digital strategy, everything from your marketing stack to CRM and beyond. And whether you're an enterprise or a government agency, the cloud is already promising significant advantages, everything from enhanced security and redundancy to unlimited scalability to greater management of compliance and governance. So in this move to the cloud, what are the must-have technologies and strategies to get you there successfully? And part of the key to all this success is leveraging platforms that are purpose-built for the cloud, including the software and the applications that run your website and your digital strategies. Now, the cloud is really only the beginning on this journey, and together we're going to explore a few other key opportunities that are essential in your preparation for 2018. And that includes looking at this transformation to a web experience platform as the next evolutionary step in CMS. We're going to talk about headless and decoupled as content management strategies and solutions. We're going to talk a little bit about compliance, specifically about ADA, because we think it's something that's very important that's got to be on the minds of CIOs and IT leaders as they plan next year. And then ultimately how all of this evolves into the customer experience to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. So you probably recognize this. It's the trusty old Magic 8-Ball, and it's one of those kitsch toys that you can buy at a Spencer's Gifts at the mall. And if you remember, you'd shake this thing up and ask it a question, and presto, an answer would appear in a little tiny window. And it'd be anything from "it is certain" to "Outlook not so good." In fact, there's even a Twitter bot now that you can use online, so it's made the leap from this physical realm into the digital. And my favorite answer has always been, "Reply hazy, try again." The best part of the Magic 8-Ball is that you could always give it another shake until you get the answer that you really wanted. And unfortunately, we still haven't cracked the code on how to predict the future. So all we can really do to get insight is to look back. And 2017 was really a year for the record books. It brought significant challenges for business and government, but really for IT leaders and all of that. And this was the year, if you remember, that nearly half the country, about 143 million people, had their personal data compromised as a result of the Equifax breach. But they weren't alone. There were breaches at Verizon, Anthem, Deloitte, all of this testing the limits of cybersecurity and public trust. And it gave technology leaders even more to have to worry about. 2017 was also a year of unprecedented natural disaster, with hurricanes causing significant business and IT interruption, wildfires in California that have really created a complex human crisis that is impacting the private and public sector. Everything from insurance to response to putting pressure on FEMA and other agencies to react with greater speed and agility to save lives and advance the recovery. And of course, worldwide, there's flooding, climate issues, human displacement. All of this is testing our infrastructures and creating greater urgency around the need to prepare. And of course, there's the daily grind in Washington, right, where gridlock has become the status quo. We've got tax reform, healthcare, compliance. A lot of this stuff just seems to be in limbo, and this continually shifting and fluid policy landscape is making it incredibly difficult for enterprises and public sector agencies to plan with any kind of real confidence. So it's fair to say that uncertainty has sort of become the new normal for us. And CIOs and IT leaders are faced with this question that if it's unexpected, it's probably going to happen at some point. And it's how you best adjust to that, how you pivot and adapt to get ahead of that, what is going to be probably inevitable change. The good news is that there's hope in the cloud, and that's where the greatest opportunity exists in this new reality. And that's why we think that 2018 is truly finally going to be the year of the cloud, seriously. And I think we're way past all of the nascent technology stages. It's been being fully adopted, and it's been a part of our personal and business lives for several years now. I think in this coming year, we'll see it fully mature into the most trusted infrastructure choice for running web and business applications, and a key initiative in the digital transformation for both the enterprise and the public sector. According to Tripwire, more than 90% of enterprises are already using it in some capacity. 52% of small businesses are already storing things in the cloud. So there's significant adoption across the marketplace, and that's being seen across industries. And of course, we go to the big dogs here. Gartner says that this cloud shift will both directly and indirectly affect more than $1 trillion, that's with a T, in IT spending by 2020. So why is all of this happening? Because the cloud promises greater security, scalability, redundancy, and reliability than the other infrastructures. And these advancements are evolving what we're doing with websites and applications on almost every part of our digital strategy. It's elevating the performance to new level. It's giving us greater confidence and predictability. But the questions still linger. Is it actually more secure? Is it actually able to achieve this higher level of reliability and redundancy? And I think to really answer that question, we have to turn to one of the most security-conscious organizations on the planet, the CIA. They built a private cloud specifically for their intelligence community, and CIO John Edwards said it was the best decision he ever made. He further went on to talk about how it used to take about 180 days to provision a single server, and now it just takes minutes. Unbelievable. So the cloud offers so much promise around productivity, efficiency, economies of scale, global reach, but it also offers the kind of security that modern enterprises and government agencies absolutely must have across their entire web and digital ecosystem. So let's talk a little bit more about the cloud, not only how it's the biggest opportunity for CIOs and IT leaders in 2018, but it's the very beginning, and it's what we're going to need to harness to really drive things into the future in the coming years. And that brings us to this first overview opportunity area, leveraging the essential Cloud 2.0 technologies for the web. And to fully embrace a successful cloud-first strategy, we want to know what are the must-have technologies to successfully move your website or web project to the cloud. What is it that we need to know? What are the things that we're not thinking about? So, Dom, we have an opportunity. We'd like to jump in and conduct a poll question. Would you share this with the audience?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Matt. No problem at all. Yeah, we do want to hear what you're thinking, what you're talking about out there. So please go ahead and answer this question. The question is, what part of your digital strategy is the highest priority for moving to the cloud? So what started the conversation for you guys in terms of cloud? You got applications, you got CMS, document management, ECM, or portals. Now, let's stick with you for a second, and then we ask Jeff from AWS his thoughts. But if you had a prediction to make, where would you say who's gonna lead the way here? Which answer?
I think applications are definitely a strong contender, but I think when we talk about what everything is running on and how you can game yourself in the direction of being able to have the most control, we're obviously feeling like a strong content management solution that's really built and purpose-built for that architecture and that infrastructure is the key to unlocking that. But, I think for the enterprise, there are lots of different avenues. I think portals is one that's really emerging as being a big area for expanding the web experience. So I'm really interested to see what people have to say, and that, of course, is going to play into how we have this conversation around the necessary technologies to really make this transition successful.
Nice. No, well said. And Jeff from AWS, is there anything that would indicate one of these leading the other in your experience with AWS?
Well, clearly, all of these are important areas. Something that we've seen a lot of is the incredible explosion of content in the area of document management and the need to store exponentially greater amounts of documentation as a corporation grows. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see that near the top.
All right, gentlemen. Well, let's see what we got here. We got kind of like a split. We're looking at a three-way split there between applications, a tie actually at the top between apps and document management ECM, and then coming in right behind with CMS at 30%, and no one selected portals. Matt, any commentary on those results?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and to kind of dovetail on what Jeff had mentioned about the need to have to really explosively expand and scale the amount of resources necessary to store documents at the enterprise level. But again, I think as you're thinking about each one of these individually, they're really connected, right? Underneath all of this is a pipework that's going to feed into one another, and we'll actually get to talk a bit about the language that decodes that as we go along. But it's not a big surprise to me, but I was thinking maybe applications would kind of jump ahead because people are thinking about them in a more active sense.
Yeah, definitely. And Jeff, before we move on, any final thoughts on what you see here from these results?
Well, I think it's clear that applications are important, and one of the more challenging aspects in order to move to the cloud is compared to document management. But I'm not surprised at all to see equal time there.
Nice.
Excellent.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for answering that question to the audience. We really appreciate you jumping in. And guys, feel free to pick up again. It's all you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Dom. I appreciate it. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're incredibly fortunate to have Jeff Duffy join us today from Amazon Web Services. He's a senior solution architect with AWS, and he's going to share with us some of the critical reasons why the cloud is so important to your future and what technologies you really need to get there successfully. So, Jeff, thanks again for being on, and take it away.
Thank you, and thanks to Solodev. Our partners are incredibly important to the success of AWS. I'd like to start by talking about the 6 major advantages of cloud computing, why you should care about the cloud. And it starts with agility. The ability to try new things without long-term commitments like buying hardware frees your organization to experiment and try different ways of doing business without large risk. Another great advantage is the fact that you can trade CapEx for OpEx. You can escape the 3 or 5 year hardware refresh cycle, only worrying about paying for what you're actually going to use in order to conduct your business. The economies of scale that you get to enjoy from AWS, we've reduced prices 62 times since 2006 and intend to continue that trend, which allows you to continue to save money and do your business more effectively. We allow you to stop guessing capacity. Deploying new applications and services used to mean that you had to make a capacity decision ahead of time and hope you got it right. But with AWS, you can increase or decrease the capacity as you need without needing to predict the future of what your loads will look like. We let you focus on your business. AWS are the experts on undifferentiated heavy lifting that's involved in running infrastructure and services at scale. We take care of that for you, which lets you focus on your core competencies and what it is that your business is good at. And finally, we let you go global in minutes. The ability to deploy your applications and services around the world in minutes with just a few clicks lets you provide lower latency and a better customer experience to your users. One of the things I'd like to touch on is the opportunity for both public and private sector customers to use the cloud effectively. AWS has millions of active customers monthly, and we have tens of thousands of government agencies, educational institutions, and nonprofit organizations around the world who use AWS. This includes public sector customers like the FDA, FINRA, the Centers for Disease Control, and the USDA who use the cloud in order to make their business more effective. Now, at AWS, security is job zero, and through our shared responsibility model, we can offer tools like our Identity Access Management Service and our network ACLs and security groups to let you implement the security posture you need easily and safely. We have compliance programs in large numbers for which we have attestations, SOC 1, 2, and 3, and ISO 9001. And we help users and customers who have need to comply with organizational requirements and government compliance programs like FedRAMP, HIPAA, PCI DSS, CGIS, FERPA, and as we'll talk about later, ADA. So some of the critical technologies for success that partners like Solodev are using to deliver great products and services start with our global infrastructure. AWS has 16 geographic regions around the world, which themselves have 44 availability zones, and we have 6 more regions coming over the next 18 months or so. A region is a physical location where AWS resources are located for you to use our services. They're divided into availability zones, which are failure domains comprised of multiple data centers that are aligned along boundaries like floodplains, fault lines, areas of network and power availability, which are all interconnected with high-speed, low-latency networks. And this allows you to architect your applications for high availability among multiple availability zones or multiple regions in order to meet both your HA and DR requirements for your business needs. We even have a special region that we call our GovCloud region, which exists for customers who need to run workloads that comply with ITAR, CGIS, and FedRAMP high requirements. And we have a second GovCloud region coming next year as well. So the next technology I'd like to talk about is VPC, or Virtual Private Cloud, which is your private isolated segment of the AWS network. It provides features like network ACLs and security groups, which allow you to restrict traffic between groups of resources instead of just IP addresses, making managing your security much easier. We offer features in VPC like our NAT gateways and VPN connectivity, and best of all, the basic VPC is free. The next technology is our Elastic Compute Cloud, which is our secure, resizable compute service, essentially servers in the cloud. And it's offered in a variety of instance types, which are oriented to specific kinds of workloads. And examples include general purpose for a good balance of CPU and memory. We have compute optimized EC2 instances, which are intended for CPU intensive workloads. Our memory optimized instances, which are useful for things like network caches and application caching. our storage optimized, which are for high throughput use cases like databases. And finally, our accelerated computing instance types offer GPUs and FPGAs for financial and high performance computing applications. EC2 integrates with services like our Elastic Block Store service, which is our storage volume service, and they can be started and stopped at will. So your instance types can change as your needs change, and you can even snapshot and clone instances for dev and test requirements. They also integrate tightly with our auto-scaling group service, which allows you to dynamically scale up and down the number of EC2 instances you're using to process your workload based on a metric that you choose. Next, I'd like to talk about our Elastic Load Balancer service, which is our cloud network load balancer service offering. It's offered in 3 types: our application load balancer, which is our layer 7 load balancer, capable of routing requests to targets based on HTTP traffic information; our network load balancer, which is our layer 4 TCP and capable of handling millions of requests a second while maintaining ultra-low latencies; and then finally, our classic load balancer, which provides a basic load balancing service across multiple instances and operates at both request and connection levels. One of the nicest features of our Elastic Load Balancer service is that it scales infinitely, so there's no need to add resources when you have load peaks occur. And it integrates tightly with our auto-scaling groups to allow you to manage the size of your fleet to only use what you need. Next, our S3, or Simple Storage Service, is our object store, which allows you to store an unlimited number of objects in containers called buckets. And it offers features like encryption at rest and native HTTP-based delivery of your objects, which you can protect with access policies that are time limited. It features storage tiers, which allow you to choose the pricing model based on the access model of your information. And it integrates tightly with Glacier, which is our cold storage service. Today, we have customers storing trillions of objects in S3. Next, our RDS, or Relational Database Service, is our managed database offering, and it supports engines like Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres, and Aurora. It's highly available, and more than 35,000 databases have been migrated to Amazon RDS using our database migration service. Our CloudFront offering is a global content delivery network that securely delivers data like videos, applications, and APIs to your users with high speed and low latency. It integrates tightly with AWS services like our S3, EC2, and Elastic Load Balancing service, and it can serve static assets, live and on-demand video at 4K resolutions, accelerate your APIs, and let you do software distribution more quickly and easily, and is used by entities like Hulu, Major League Baseball, NASA, and Intuit to perform and provide information to their customers quickly and with low latency. And then finally, AWS Shield is our managed distributed denial of service protection service that can protect your web applications running on AWS. It's offered in 2 tiers, standard and advanced, and all AWS customers automatically get AWS Shield Standard at no extra cost, which includes features like network flow monitoring. It allows you to protect yourself from common DDoS attacks like SYN floods, ACT+, and DNS reflection attacks. And Shield Advanced adds protection for services like our Route 53 DNS service, our CloudFront and Elastic Load Balancing services, and adds features like traffic monitoring, additional DDoS mitigation capacity, attack notification, and historical reports of attacks. And now I'd like to go back to Matt to talk about the next stage in our discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And one thing I want to point out is how frequently you made reference to the fact that these services are included or at no extra cost. There's just so much value that's wrapped into what Amazon is doing with their innovations in the cloud, and that's one of the reasons why we really believe in the platform. And it's really provided. Not only has it been disruptive all along, but it's really providing a path to the future. And that actually takes me into the next part of our discussion, which is evolving from the traditional CMS to a cloud-first web experience platform. And this is really about applications and platforms that live inside this environment, right? So we've talked about the cloud. What about the stuff that's inside it? How is it optimized, and how is it purpose-built for this infrastructure? And I think when we talk about this whole move to the cloud, it's been really evolutionary, right? We've seen the infrastructure make that leap, but not all of the applications are necessarily there in parity. So there's a bit of catch-up. So to really fully realize the opportunities for your website or your digital strategy in a cloud-first world, you really need web applications that are specifically built for that infrastructure. And the benefits, of course, are very clear. You have nearly unlimited scalability, much tighter security, greater uptime, and all-around higher performance. So when it comes to your websites and web projects, having that world-class content management system is going to be essential for running them and managing them. But to really attain the benefits of the cloud, you need it in evolutionary lockstep with the infrastructure. And that's what we refer to as a cloud-first web experience platform. So there are a couple of reasons why a web experience platform is so groundbreaking. Unlike a traditional CMS, which is still very much focused on website management, this web experience platform concept engages customers and content experiences that are much more interactive, much more bidirectional. And web experience at its core is about leveraging all of these digital technologies to really transform the customer's experience as they interact and touch your digital brand. And with a cloud-first web experience platform, you're not just managing servers and infrastructure anymore. You're now finally free to focus on managing the content. You have a better separation of the CMS and custom code, so you're free to continuously deploy and iterate. And you also have more redundancy and archiving capability, so you can make changes or roll things back quickly as needed. So along with all of this comes much greater speed, much greater capacity, and this all allows you to respond to customer changes much more rapidly. So the new breed of cloud-first web experience platform is also delivering new levels of control without having to compromise. The kinds of flexible, extensible architectures that are aligning with the efficiencies of the cloud are creating more potential for you to customize. And for brands, that is so vital, right? Organizations need to have greater freedom to be able to create really unique experiences. And this is really critical as enterprises and agencies really look to have more flexibility than ever to differentiate their brand and be better positioned to compete. When we think about our marketing stack and the value that it brings to driving leads, it's essential to have a content management platform that integrates with everything in your ecosystem. Having a web experience platform that's designed for the cloud enables greater insight from all these different connections that you make. And as more of these solutions become cloud-based themselves, these integrations become even more seamless. So you're able to bring everything into one connected ecosystem. So what are the absolutely must-have considerations for selecting a cloud-first web experience platform? Well, first, it's really important to choose a solution, as I mentioned already a few times, that's purpose-built and fully aligned with the best capabilities of the cloud infrastructure. So in other words, a platform that's designed for the environment and everything that it offers. Automatic recovery, fault tolerance, redundancy from a diverse geographic strategy, and of course, there's the security piece, which Jeff talked quite a bit about. Leading infrastructures like Amazon offer stronger perimeters and surveillance, controlled access and permissioning, and they've got deep cybersecurity expertise in auditing. So in many ways, it's like we're layering security on top of security, and given things that have happened in this past year, that's become even more important. You also want a platform that's capable of allowing for advanced customizations. There shouldn't be any limits on creating the unique kinds of design and functional experiences that you want in your web presentation. The traditional CMS is often like a dream killer, right? And it shouldn't stand in the way of your most creative ideas. And a lot of these cookie-cutter options tend to force you to fit your brand into the kinds of templates that can compromise your ability to customize around your user and the user experience. You want freedom. You want flexibility. And of course, all of this needs to be underscored with the mobile responsiveness and full capability of having a cohesive experience across every device. You're going to want to choose a platform with a RESTful API. Now, this is an absolute must for the future of your interoperability. In many ways, this form of an API behaves kind of like a universal translator from Star Trek, right? It's basically how Kirk and Spock could speak to almost any alien race they encountered. And I think having a web experience platform that wraps everything in this RESTful API provides that path for integrating with all of your third-party applications all the way up through marketing automation. And this used to be handled by things like SOAP, but we've really evolved to a place where it's much more streamlined and much more capable of being pulled into a full strategy. Finally, you should choose a platform that minimizes your use of open source. Now, we're all familiar with the large-scale systems and platforms like WordPress, and they certainly have their place in the universe. But they lack the kinds of security and scalability for truly accountable enterprise solutions. So while they might bring inherent challenges as well around ADA compliance and accessibility if they're not supported the right way. And as an example, if you're using WordPress plugins, the code in those plugins may not always be inspectable. Overall, I think it's okay to sprinkle some open source into your recipe. Enterprise open source platforms like Bootstrap, which is managed by Twitter, it's far more accountable. But don't build your entire website strategy on an open source platform. Okay, so the next stop on this train is around headless and how it's going to revolutionize your content management strategy. And for us, this is really, truly one of the most exciting areas in the advancement of CMS technology. And while we've been embracing it for a number of years, it still feels like it's misunderstood and certainly underutilized. I think this next year is really going to be the year where we start to see more strategy around building it into the digital platforms and the content management strategies at the enterprise level. I've been talking to a lot of CIOs and IT leaders of late, and when I bring this up, people get very excited, but there is apprehension, and for obvious reasons, right? It's kind of a scary name, right? While it's apropos, the truth is it's really not scary, and if you have the right platform, you can build the right strategy around it. So I'm just to take a couple of minutes and talk about what it is, and it's very much like a traditional CMS, but without a front-end website or presentation layer. And historically, CMS contained the entire website experience, right? And they referred to that as monolithic. And it was delivered through a front-end set of templates and code with a back-end interface to manage the content. But with headless, all of that's been cut away from the configuration, meaning that the CMS lives in the cloud and uses that RESTful API that we talked about to drive data to different panes of glass. And this change was really driven by the mobile revolution and a growing need for any device in any format as an approach for managing and delivering content. In essence, the horseman doesn't care about where the content is delivered. It can be cross-platform and not limited by the medium. And as long as the APIs are speaking the same language, that content magic can be cast across a variety of endpoints like websites, mobile applications, the Internet of Things, wearable technology like smartwatches, maybe even smart refrigerators or appliances, and then things like virtual gaming or augmented reality, even screen readers for the low vision or blind audience, where the websites are no longer an intermediate layer for the device to scan, but content is actually delivered directly to a Braille reader. So like headless, a decoupled CMS keeps the front-end templates for your website, but still allows you to detach the data on the back end, so it's free. And while headless is maybe not the best solution for marketers, decoupled is really starting to solve more of those problems. And let's face it, marketers are really at the heart of a CMS. And of course, what would any conversation about the future be without things like speech? Alexa and smart homes are really embracing the search capability of speech. In fact, 20% of all Google search is now voice traffic. So what really matters here is the data. It's not the application of the device. Those form factors will come and go. Phones will change. App layers will evolve. But the way the data is structured behind it all, that's the secret sauce. And as an example, in this Miami Beach VCA app that we developed, the backend data consisted of public records that could be instantly updated and immediately called into the application. So what are some of the key advantages of a headless strategy? Well, for starters, there's no interference from the CMS code and consequently no issues when upgrading the CMS. It's also perfect for websites that are using JavaScript frameworks and mobile apps that are pulling content to iOS or Android. Headless is also designed for ecosystems of apps and websites that use the same content in lots of different places, so you're relaying that across different devices and experiences. It's also ideal for this new realm that they're calling content as a service. With headless, developers can also use any dev platform of their choice. So remember, you're not creating custom CMS templates. You can develop in standard applications you already know, and that requires less training. And there are great new standards that are emerging. This is really the signal that it's becoming a more adopted approach. Specifically, something called Swagger UI, which is a dependency-free collection of HTML and Java and CSS assets that you can use to create your own RESTful API and upload into a cloud gateway. Really awesome and powerful capabilities. Now, it's not for everyone. It doesn't deliver the same degree of control over the website presentation layer, and it does depart from the use of web templates and other features in conventional CMS. And you'll need more development support, but I think we're starting to see a lot of those solutions be solved. And next year, I think we'll see headless as an entire marketplace, along with decoupled, start to change the way that marketers and managers look at their content management platform. What are the must-haves? We'll just run down the list real quickly here. The first step is to define your delivery ecosystem. What are the different devices and experience points where you want to manage content and connect with an audience? You want to develop a structured data and content modeling methodology so that you're able to understand how data is being organized on the back end. And if you're using it in different places, having a common data structure provides a lot more efficiency and adaptability. You also want to invest in a CMS that is cloud-first and headless ready. So it means it's been built from the ground up and has that same RESTful API layer that we've spoken about. CMS should also have the best-of-breed cloud features and functionality so that it's scalable, delivers greater uptime and performance, everything you need to succeed. And I think the most important point is to understand if it's the right strategy for your digital and content platform. When we look at the Internet of Things and the growth of new devices, it really seems like a logical step. But it's got to start by understanding how you'll be managing that ecosystem. Okay, getting ahead on ADA compliance. This is going to be a big one for a lot of companies and organizations next year. And while best practices and semantic HTML5 have created some solutions, the challenge is a lot more expansive than a lot of us realize. Now, I know that compliance can feel like an enormous weight. I know Jeff mentioned a few of the compliance requirements in his overview, and we've been dealing with these for years, especially when you see the response to the data breaches as we've seen in 2017. HIPAA, FISMA, PCI, we know about these things on both the enterprise and government level, and the key to success has been to respond and be proactive and plan. But ADA is one compliance area that continues to be a little misunderstood. And if you ask a lot of developers, you'll probably encounter some of blank stares and confusion. So it's really up to IT leaders to make it a priority. And ignorance isn't bliss, right? You have to comply with these requirements. And if you're upgrading your website and digital strategy next year, remember that once you start down that road, you have to adhere to the latest rules and regulations. So how misunderstood is ADA? Well, we actually did our own research, and it's abundantly clear that it's not clear. In an anecdotal survey we conducted with CIOs and certified government CIOs, we actually got a range of responses, everything from HTML5 fixes most of these problems to ADA is the single most important initiative we're working on next year. So with so much on the line, it's really not the time to be unclear on this issue. So real quickly, I'll go into what kind of impact does ADA regulation have on websites and your web strategy. And quite simply, it's really just expanding the protections of the Americans with Disabilities Act from the physical to the digital. It actually affects a lot of us. 19% of the population, about 60 million people have disabilities, and a large percentage of those people are using websites and digital services every day. So ADA and its website policies have been slow to evolve, but frankly, that's because when Congress passed it in 1990, the Internet didn't exist as we know it. So regardless of where we're evolving to, ADA on the web is still about delivering the same, what we refer to as full digital equality for the disabled. These are our friends, families, and neighbors, but they're also our customers and constituents. But there's another aspect to this that affects every one of us on this webinar, and it's called aging. I know we're all trying to resist the inevitable, but one day we're all going to be less mobile and less or more dependent on help. And the age-related impact means that most of us will eventually need these ADA protections. In fact, we're more likely to need more as we might be struggling with multiple conditions at the same time. So when you think about it, ADA is about future-proofing our own needs. As the coming generation of baby boomers moves into this phase, we'll see the largest number of elderly people with web savviness accessing services online. So ADA covers a lot of different things, and we'll just touch on the obvious ones: blindness and vision impairment, deafness, hearing loss, but it's also things like specific learning disabilities and physical, mobile, and motor skill issues like arthritis, where using a mouse can be difficult. So the goal is to make the web experience more accessible in each of these areas. How does this impact your website and your web strategy? Well, if you're a government agency of any kind, it has the most urgent effect. State, municipal, and local governments that need to accept federal funding must comply with the strictest tenets of ADA, known as Section 508. But there are rules out there in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. You just got to follow them. Furthermore, if you're not in compliance, you're already at significant risk. Here's a startling stat. In the last year, federal ADA Title III lawsuits were up 18%, meaning that the DOJ is motivated to pursue more of these complaints. But we're not just talking about the public sector. I'm sure most of us have been to Five Guys Burgers and Fries, and like other public businesses, they have met all their ADA requirements with ramps and signs and other coded services. But recently, there was a DOJ filing against the burger chain for not having an ADA-compliant website, and that's now progressed to a class action suit. There are countless others with Winn-Dixie, and I think the New York Post reported that there were, in a 13-day period this summer, there were 14 lawsuits against small retailers. And while the ADA doesn't allow for damages, lawyers can pursue their legal fees, which are getting bigger. There's a lot to take in, and it can seem intimidating, but there's actually a path to protecting yourself and ensuring this digital equality. And it starts by preparing for the reality that there's more to come, and there's certainly going to be more lawsuits. So it may not be a case of if, but when. The first thing you want to do is seek out a trusted ADA consultant or a platform like SiteImprove that can really help you to understand the business requirements. And as an example, e-commerce is different than public sector, so you really want a partner that understands or is focused on that area. Document everything, because the best defense to having a clear record of your efforts is to have that all backed up and documented. Embrace structured data practices, because ADA at its core is a form of structured data. And structured data is also dynamite for SEO, so you reap lots of benefits by bringing that organization to it. You want to build on a CMS that doesn't get in the way of meeting ADA. Open source plugins, as I mentioned earlier, for platforms like WordPress, sometimes they contain code that isn't inspectable, and that can make it challenging to reach compliance. And finally, you want to work with a long-term partner that provides auditing support, because ADA isn't just about meeting compliance, it's about maintaining it. So you need a great platform, you need qualified people that are committed to regularly testing and ensuring that you meet these requirements. Last stop. Opportunity number 5 is all about the areas we've talked about today, because everything you do with your web and digital strategy next year is about improving your customers' experience. And if 2017 has taught us anything, it's that customers need our help, and they need our trust to navigate these murky waters of digital. And to do this, you need to build stronger connections with your audience and enhance the engagements on every level. So how important is this shift to focus on the customer experience? Well, according to a global C-suite study, 60% of CIOs are already committing resources to it, and it's because of mobile. Mobile is driving that change. And to get the data from these platforms, the most meaningful data, we need websites to be more agile, extensible, and adjustable to gathering and implementing feedback, so you can map your user's journey and shape it from end to end. For websites, cloud first can also mean customer first, and reaching those customers requires content and a dynamic platform as a foundation. So the evolution to a cloud-first web experience platform promises greater potential for improving that customer experience in a number of ways. It's going to make you more nimble. It's going to allow you to react and respond faster. And a great infrastructure means that your customer's experience is more secure, stable, and trusted. And a cloud-first customer experience also means you can aggregate data from your entire ecosystem, not just your website, but social channels, applications, and beyond. So you've been incredibly patient today, and I just want to wrap up this piece on the customer experience with a short story about school websites and unicorns. As it turns out, the best lessons in customer experience are actually taught by schools because they have the best kinds of customers, parents, teachers, and administrators. And when it comes to delivering a website experience, a lot of schools earn an F. And this isn't always due to some of the things that you might think are obvious, like a lack of funding or priority. It's because in many cases, these customer-centric technologies were being managed and implemented by IT, who were really disconnected from the customer. But I'll make it personal when I talk about my own 13-year-old son who attends a public school, and his dream for summer vacation was to get his summer reading list and start reading right away. And sure, that was my goal for him, but I wanted to make sure he had the right resources. So of course, I head directly to his school's website, only to find confusion. Now, I'm a relatively smart guy, but finding what I was looking for through a navigation that wasn't clear or intuitive made it very difficult and frustrating. I eventually had to call the school only to discover that it was somewhere I wouldn't have even looked. The thing is, this isn't a unique experience, and in our analysis, we found that many school websites lacked clear direction, had clumsy mobile experiences, and no real mechanisms for feedback. So instead, I had to tie up a human resource, which ultimately cost the school money. And the worst part isn't my frustration as a parent or the inability for the school to know what my experience was. It was that all of this affects the student. So Solodev actually had an opportunity to go back to school and help reinvent this K-12 public school website experience by giving it the right transformational technologies and best practices to help Seminole County Public Schools evolve their customer experience. And it started with getting them on a cloud-first web experience platform to give them greater control over their customer's journey, be able to manage things like athletic calendars, take that out of the hands of IT and move it into local school administrators. It also gave them the ability to respond to things quickly and easily. They weren't manipulating code. They were able to quickly and easily respond to any of the feedback that they received from their community. And with control came the degrees of ADA compliance and mandates that the school also needed to achieve. What made this project rewarding was the response from the community, because not only did it save the client money by training their local schools to build and manage their own web content, but they were finally able to use these digital tools to improve the customer experience. So the cloud-first web experience platform has really been the key to transforming this website and many others, but it's also a way that you can unlock your own evolution in improving customer experience. You want to have a clear picture of your customer's journey and buying path. You want to start there before you even head down the road of engaging a development firm or coding. To build technology solutions that are going to help you to enhance that experience, you have to have the right kind of platform, a web experience platform, one that's really designed for improving customer experiences. It also provides for greater personalization to make that experience more connective to the visitor. You also want the ability to automate feedback collection wherever possible so you can get smarter about customer behavior. And in the end, you want to build in testing capabilities that allow you to support all of these practices. So the more that you automate and report, the faster you can take action. Well, as fun as the Magic 8 Ball is, we all have to be grounded, and hopefully this insight helps to shake things up as you plan your 2018 digital strategy. There are a lot of challenges, but a lot of great opportunities ahead as well, and we're looking forward to talking more about each of these areas as we get into 2018. So feel free to email me at the address here on screen, and if there are any questions, I'll swing it back to Don.
Nice. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jeff, as well. Yeah, we have come to the Q&A portion of the show. Again, this is Don Nicastro from CMS Wire, staff reporter here on today's webinar with Solodev. And Matt, just a quick comment before we get into that. I mean, if my son's middle school website would just let me know where his homework is, then I'd be happy so I can track him.
We're actually working on that application, Dom. So we'll have that ready in 2018.
That's the only thing I need to know is homework and calendar. So where do I have to go, and what do I have to ask him about his homework?
Exactly. And
so
you want those things to work, right?
You really do. You really do. It's important. You're so spot on with school websites. They're mostly terrible, and for them to partner with Solodev, that was huge. I'm sure the parents and community are happy with that one. So thumbs up there for sure from a school parent. So let's move on to the Q&A session of the show. We do have some questions, and just to let you know, we have time here to ask fresh questions. So get your questions in there. Use that Q&A module at the bottom left of the browser. Just go in and submit a question. We'll be monitoring that. If we don't happen to get to it, we'll try to follow up there. But also, Solodev has offered they'll be monitoring their Twitter account. We have a Twitter, obviously, too, CMS Wire. But you can tweet to Solodev if you want, if you have a question, or even after the fact, if you thought of one post-show. And also check out that speaker widget to the left to learn more about our presenters, and the resources widget to the right for more information. So let's go to a question. We're going to start this one with Matt. Question is, do you see any areas where headless CMS would be a disadvantage? I know we talked a lot about advantages, but where would headless CMS possibly be a disadvantage? Matt?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, and I think in my overview, I kind of touched on this just a little bit. I think the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages, and I think what we're going to see evolving next year is a lot of these challenges that have existed for the last few years beginning to evaporate because there's just a lot more cohesion through the RESTful API. There's a lot more capability to plug things in. But you know what's really important is about having a platform that can manage your content, right? So you want a CMS that supports both headless and has the built-in capabilities for developing a UI that allows you to create content directly. And that's actually, that kind of hybrid is really referred to as decoupled. And CMS that have a purely headless could be a disadvantage because they don't have that capability built into them. So we tend to recommend a more traditional enterprise CMS that has that, as I refer to, fully headless ready capability. And again, the secret sauce to that is the RESTful API that's built in.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that answer, Matt. And moving on in the Q&A session here, thank you for your questions, folks. Much appreciated. We're going to stick with Matt on this one, and I also like some input from Jeff. But here's the question. The question is, how would you architect a disaster recovery solution in a hybrid cloud environment where 50% of the apps are on AWS and the other 50% of the app system, including the system of records, are on-premise infrastructure? So you have a little bit of both of you, 50% AWS, 50% on-premise. How would you architect the disaster recovery solution in a hybrid situation like that? Let's start with Matt.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's, as we get down into more of the technical posture, and hybrid cloud is something that is, definitely popping up for us as we're entering into more engagements. And there are sometimes embedded strategies where there's already either storage or some other capability that's being hosted in a cloud infrastructure environment, and trying to figure out how to marry these things together is really falling into the sort of the technical secret sauce part of it. And I'm actually going to swing it over to Jeff because I think he might have a little bit more insight than I do on this one.
Yeah, thank you. So we have lots of customers who have successful hybrid environments, especially for DR, whether it's because they have specific licensing or regulatory needs to keep some of those applications on-premise. And the most common scenario that we're seeing people implement is what we call a pilot-light environment. And the idea behind this is that you can replicate the minimum number of resources necessary in order to process your particular workload on AWS, have that workload running as it normally does on-prem, and then you use a number of AWS service offerings like our Route 53 DNS service, which is capable of performing health checks and routing percentages of traffic either to on-prem or to AWS. Of replicating your information from on-premise to AWS using services like our database migration service and a service we have called Storage Gateway, which lets you copy local files up to our S3 service for replication. And then finally, our Direct Connect service. It's a direct fiber connection to the AWS Edge network for higher throughput, lower latency needs for customers. And what this allows them to do is to use our inbuilt auto-scaling facilities to recognize when an on-premise event happens and to redirect all of the traffic up to AWS, let your pilot-light environment scale to deal with your full production workload in just a few minutes.
Nice. Thanks for that hybrid question. Very good question from our audience. Thank you so much for that. Again, Dominic Castro here from CMS Wire. Moving on. We're in the Q&A here. So let's stick with Jeff on this one. Jeff from AWS, thanks for joining us. And let's have a question for you once again. So the question is obviously for you, why should my website be hosted on the AWS cloud? So kind of sell me there, Jeff.
Because it allows you to build a highly scalable environment that can handle lots of bursty traffic without over-provisioning, to create it in a highly secure fashion, and to pay for only what you use in an easy way. Our services like our auto-scaling service, which allows you to only build what you need today and to automatically scale resources up and down and only to pay for those resources as you need them. like our S3 service, which allows you to store an infinite amount of information, but only pay for it based on how much you're storing and how you access it. And other services of that fashion allow you to only pay for what you need and not have to guess about the future.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thanks for that question and answer. So the next question is more around that ADA compliance. Such a challenge. Even me as a journalist, you got to keep that in mind when you're tagging photos and the alt tags and stuff. ADA compliance is definitely a big part of that. So it's a challenge for sure to keep that in mind. We'd like to know in this question, just a couple more suggestions on ADA compliance, making sure we got everything locked up and we're in lockstep with that very important regulation. Matt, you want to give us some more tips on that?
Yeah, there are a lot of, I think that the challenge, and this is the challenge with any kind of compliance or governance or regulation, or maybe it's just, the government in general when it comes to trying to be reactive to, data breaches and things that are impacting us that require governance, is that it isn't always clear, right? I mean, so the first few months or even first few years in the timetable require us to have to understand, especially in IT, what the ramifications are. And then we have to, develop a strategy and a plan around that, and then we have to implement. So, with ADA, there's been a slightly different vector to it because it's been a regulatory reality for the physical realm for a long time. So this is really about adapting it as we move along, and this has all been a learning process for me over the last few years in really starting to embrace it as a company. And Solodev, we're uniquely positioned because our product doesn't get in the way of it. I think that's a really key point. Our product and other products that allow you to, better achieve full ADA compliance, that's where you want to start. Right. So if you're thinking about rebooting your website or digital strategy in 2018, you want to look at and carefully consider platforms that are going to help get you there more confidently and don't stand in the way of it. And I think I mentioned in the presentation that one of the key issues around that is that oftentimes in open source platforms, you can't inspect, you don't have ownership over the code that's running behind these plugins. So it gets very difficult and hairy to be able to have the confidence that those components in the mix are going to help you meet ADA. And I also mentioned that ADA isn't just about meeting the compliance, it's about maintaining it. So again, you want to have the right software available or the right human partnership with software to continually scan for ADA issues. I think it's also helpful too if you bring in at least some measure of training to your staff so they know to ask those questions. I mean, Dom, I think you shine a real quick light on this, need for things like alt tags. That's foundational stuff, but, it's just about best practices. And when you think about this, security, physical security, a lot of organizations have spent, a long time developing the right best practices internally to make sure that their staff follows very basic rules. I think you start there and give your staff enough training to be able to understand what the fundamentals are.
Nice. Well, thanks, guys, for the presentation. We are out of time now. Anybody who has a question that's burning and didn't get to it, just hit us up, contact us, and we'll follow up with that for sure. So thank you so much for attending this webinar. Look out for the on-demand video. Look out for a recap article. Jeff Duffy of AWS and Matt Garapi of Solodev. Man, good job, guys, working together like that. Great stuff. Hey, if your company is interested, yeah, it's good to have you guys. Companies interested in sponsoring a webinar just like this with CMS Wire, like Solodev did today, just email us, webinars@cmswire.com. Dom Nicastro signing off.